And it looked like ESPN just told the shocking truth as to why Sandy Brondello was let go by the New York Liberty. Guys, for this one here,
ESPN just revealed the shocking truth behind Sandy Brondello's firing, and fans are stunned by what they're hearing. The Liberty's winningest coach, a champion already, suddenly pushed out the door. And now the reason is finally clear. The details are just as chaotic as they are unbelievable. And this entire situation completely reshapes the future of the WNBA.
The New York Liberty have let go Sandy Brondello. Well, in their terms, they will not renew her contract. In our eyes, they parted ways. She was fired, essentially. But not as bad as being fired, I guess. But that's just how we talk out here. Nonetheless, I'm shocked. She's been a coach there for 4 seasons. You look at the past 3 seasons, she made it to the finals in her 2nd season. She won the finals in her 3rd season, and they lost in round 1 this year. Outside looking in, you look at this franchise and you see that's a successful franchise. New York is a powerhouse in the W right now. So what is the issue? What is the front office looking at? What are the ownership?
The headline breaks in ESPN is the one leading the charge. Sandy Brondello, the most accomplished coach the Liberty has ever had, dismissed only a year after bringing home a championship. Fans blink twice thinking it has to be a mistake. But nope, this is reality. It's proof the WNBA can be just as ruthless when power, pride, and ego take over. Let's unpack exactly what ESPN exposed, because this story isn't only about basketball. It's about politics, pressure, and a franchise trying to play bigger than the entire league. According to ESPN, this move wasn't some emotional reaction to one rough playoff exit. It had been simmering long before. That's right. Sandy Brondello might have been gone last season if she hadn't won the title. Championship or nothing, literally.
The title? What exactly led to the parting of ways between the Liberty and Sandy Brondello here?
Well, Malika, I know you guys talk about this a lot in the NBA and in other sports, but it was really championship or bust for New York and for Sandy Brondello. And in fact, if they hadn't won the championship last year, we might have been having this conversation a year ago, which is maybe a little startling to fans outside given how, excuse me for those noises, for how impactful she'd been for that franchise. But that is how bullish this organization is in New York and how their ownership and management really are looking to just continue upon that success.
Now, maybe it's just me, but how does any of this add up? You hire a coach, she rebuilds your organization, takes you further than ever before, wins more games than any Liberty coach ever, delivers a championship, and your reward to her is a termination notice. That's like ordering a meal, finishing every bite, then returning the plate because the napkin wasn't folded right. There's no logic, and ESPN essentially spelled that out.
And so I think for New York moving forward, I would expect them to really, again, be bullish in who they go after. We know that they are a WNBA franchise that invests a lot in a lot of resources, a lot of financial capital into these decisions. So I think it wouldn't be shocking, though, if they decide to go after maybe someone in the NBA, someone that we might be a little bit more of a non-traditional hire. I do think Sandy Brondello has a great shot of getting hired again. We know what she has done in this league. We know that there's openings in Seattle, for example, in addition to the 2.
The Liberty front office has been labeled aggressive. Translation: they've got Wall Street owners who think sports function exactly like their investment charts. If the numbers aren't flawless, dump the asset and buy another one. They don't believe in patience. They want nonstop dominance. And if you can't provide it instantly, they'll hunt for someone they assume can. But here's where the situation gets wild. Brondello wasn't just winning. She was doing it while navigating major problems beyond her control. Key playoff injuries, players not fully healthy, a roster lacking depth, and still she guided them to the finals and even captured the title. Yet somehow the front office managed to twist all of that into a negative.
With ESPN to give us an update as to why Sandy Brondello will let go. And what's crazy about all of this in this interview that I'm about to show you guys is that Sandy Brondello was supposed to be fired last year, but she actually won the WNBA championship.
According to ESPN insider Alexa, the front office basically decided before the playoffs even began that it was championship or goodbye. Meaning if New York didn't pull off back-to-back titles, Sandy was finished. Just let that sink in for a second.
Liberty just fired their head coach. People are confused as to why, because they won the championship last year, they made the playoffs this year. In sports, there's always a scapegoat when things aren't going the way that they wanted it to go. Clearly, in New York, the standard has been raised. As Coach Tibbs learned with the New York Knicks, making the playoffs does not guarantee that you are safe anymore. They have raised the standard. They're sending a message to the fans, to the team, saying, we don't want to just go to the playoffs. We need to go to the finals and we need to win. So if it's not the players on the court that are changing, it's got to be the coaching staff. So unfortunately, that did mean Coach.
Even though she literally delivered the franchise its first championship ever, she was being graded on whether she could instantly repeat it. The standard was set so impossibly high that failure was the only outcome that made sense. It's almost funny. Other teams would kill to have a coach with her resume: 40 playoff wins, titles with multiple franchises, known for getting players to buy in without turning into a tyrant. Yet New York looks at that resume and says, yeah, appreciate it, but we want someone else. It's like firing a chef after earning your first Michelin star, because the garnish on dish number 6 wasn't Instagram ready. And the timing was ruthless. ESPN highlighted that this wasn't a graceful farewell or some respectful send-off. The Liberty dropped the announcement fast, released a dull, thank you for your service statement, and instantly shifted the conversation to finding a replacement. No celebration, no tribute, just a cold, we wish her the best moving forward. Now here's why this cuts deeper than a coaching change. It exposes the WNBA's strange obsession with mimicking NBA drama, without having the structure to support it. The Liberty are acting like they're the Lakers firing a coach after missing a three-peat. Reality check, you're not. You're in a league still battling for relevance, still trying to convince casual fans that stars like Caitlin Clark are worth tuning in for. What you need is stability, not chaos. And speaking of Caitlin Clark, let's not pretend this doesn't connect to her. Caitlin has already reshaped the power dynamic inside the WNBA. She's entering her second year now. No longer the rookie excitement story, but the actual face of the league. Everything she does gets amplified. And when someone like Sandy Brondello praises her or even acknowledges her influence, the old guard gets uneasy. Suddenly the politics of who deserves credit matter more than actual victories. That's what ESPN hinted at without outright saying. Brondello's honesty about praising Caitlin and recognizing her impact on the league rubbed certain people the wrong way. The Liberty want their stars, Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu, to be the uncontested faces of the team and maybe even the league. Having a coach publicly acknowledge Caitlin's cultural weight doesn't exactly fit the "we're the center of everything" narrative the Liberty keep pushing. And here's where things get fiery. Breanna Stewart only signed a one-year deal, meaning she can walk. Picture this. The Liberty fire the coach who won them a title just to prove some strange point, and in the process they push away the very star who gave them legitimacy. ESPN even floated the idea that Stewart could leave. And if that happens, New York collapses from contender to rebuild instantly. That's the risk they're taking, and it's ridiculous. Meanwhile, players around the league are reacting. Becky Hammon openly said she didn't support the decision. That's huge. When one of the most respected coaches in the sport basically calls your move garbage without saying the word, you should probably rethink what you're doing. But the Liberty aren't listening. They're too focused on acting like strategic geniuses while actually just knocking pieces off the board. And then comes the bigger question. Who replaces Sandy? ESPN suggested the Liberty may even look outside the WNBA, possibly at NBA assistants. Because yeah, nothing screams stability like giving an elite veteran roster to someone who has never handled a WNBA locker room. That's like handing someone a Formula One car after they've only driven bumper cars. It's reckless, but New York loves flashy risks. The irony is that Sandy Brondello will absolutely land on her feet. Seattle has a vacancy. Expansion teams are searching. She's far too respected to sit unemployed. So the Liberty aren't just losing a coach, they're handing a rival a championship-level leader. Imagine Sandy turning around and leading Seattle to a title. That would be the ultimate revenge arc, and ESPN would eat it up. Now let's rewind to the Liberty's actual record under Brondello. ESPN laid out everything. In 2022, they finished 16-20. Not impressive, but it was a rebuilding phase. In 2023, they exploded to 32-8 and reached the finals. In 2024, they posted another 32-8 season and won the championship. And in 2025, they fell in the first round with a 27-7 record, mostly due to injuries. That resume gets you fired? Seriously? Coaches with half that success get multi-year extensions and statues outside the arena. This is why fans are outraged. The firing makes zero basketball sense. It only makes sense if you assume the Liberty front office cares more about appearances than results. They want to be the glamour franchise, the face of the WNBA, the team that flexes its power. But instead of building on stability, they've introduced chaos. And chaos rarely wins. Think about the message this sends inside the locker room. Players are expected to trust leadership, buy into the plan, and believe hard work leads to reward. Instead, they're watching their coach, the one who helped them break barriers, thrown out like last week's headline. That's demoralizing. And if you think pros don't notice this stuff, you're mistaken. They know exactly when management is playing games. And then there are the fans. ESPN showed how stunned people were. Social media erupted with Liberty supporters calling the decision betrayal, nonsense, even sabotage. Some said they won't back the team until ownership changes. That's how badly this blew up. The Liberty thought they were making a bold power move. Instead, they pushed their own fans away. And here's the twist. This isn't just about Sandy Brondello. It's about how the WNBA handles success. Too often the league sabotages itself. Instead of celebrating steady growth, it chases headline drama. Instead of letting stars coexist, it forces rivalries. And instead of committing long-term, it jumps toward shortcuts. That's why this firing feels bigger than one team. It's a warning sign. And that's exactly why ESPN's report hit so hard, because it revealed the truth. Sandy wasn't fired for failing. She was fired because the Liberty front office wanted perfection, control, and a spotlight that never dims. And in chasing that spotlight, they may have actually dimmed their own future. So here's where things get even clearer. ESPN didn't frame this as a simple coach gets fired situation. They framed it as a full-on franchise identity crisis. The Liberty are stuck between two competing visions. On one side, the steady foundation Sandy Brondello built, and on the other, an impatient, headline-hungry ownership group that wants to mimic an NBA super team. That clash finally erupted, and Brondello ended up being the one who paid the price. The irony is that her players were behind her. Breanna Stewart, right after the playoff exit, publicly said the team supported Sandy. That wasn't empty talk. That was a superstar making it obvious the locker room still believed in their coach. Yet management ignored it. And if you're someone like Stewart on a one-year deal, what are you supposed to think? It screams that your input doesn't matter. You wanted stability. They chose turmoil. That leaves the door wide open for her to consider leaving. And trust me, the league is paying attention to all of this. Coaches and players across the WNBA see exactly what went down. They see a coach who delivered far beyond expectations, thrown aside because she didn't fit an unrealistic, perfection-obsessed vision. That sends a message. Loyalty means nothing. Winning isn't enough. And if you think free agents won't weigh that, think again. Why would a top star trust New York when they know management panics the second something goes wrong? ESPN also highlighted something much larger. This wasn't about one playoff run. It was about power. The Liberty's ownership has spent big on branding, marketing, and world-class facilities. They want to be the jewel of the WNBA. But with money comes ego. They don't want a coach who gets credit for creating the culture. They want the spotlight themselves. And Sandy's success threatened that storyline. That's why some insiders already believe her replacement might be an NBA assistant. Not because it's smart basketball, but because it sounds bold. It makes news. It fits the New York showmanship image. But here's the catch. Players don't care about flashy hires. They want trust, stability, and someone who can guide them through the grind of an entire season. Brondello already proved she could. Whoever steps in next is walking into disaster. And remember, expansion is coming. Seattle has an opening. 2 new teams are forming. ESPN made it clear. Sandy Brondello won't be jobless for long. And here's where it gets entertaining. If she signs with one of those teams and wins again, the Liberty become the punchline of the league. Imagine firing your championship coach just to watch her build another contender somewhere else. That's the kind of story fans love. But the biggest takeaway, and what ESPN really pushed hard, is this: the Liberty made themselves the headline for all the wrong reasons. Instead of celebrating a dynasty foundation, they're fielding questions about dysfunction, ego, and whether they even know what a winning culture looks like. Fans see through it. Players see through it. And if the front office thinks they can spin this as some visionary move, they're delusional. The WNBA is at a critical turning point. Caitlin Clark is in year 2, pushing viewership to historic highs. New stars are emerging. The league finally has real momentum. The last thing it needs is one of its flagship franchises showing the world exactly how not to handle success. But that's exactly what New York just did. They didn't fire Sandy Brondello because she failed. They fired her because she wasn't easy to control. And ESPN exposed that from top to bottom. So where does that leave us? With the league watching its supposed model franchise implode under ego, with a coach who deserved better already being pursued elsewhere, and with fans questioning whether the Liberty just wrecked their own future for the sake of optics. ESPN's report showed exactly what happened. And now the Liberty look more fragile than they ever have. Sandy Brondello gave them history and still got tossed aside. Fans deserve better than boardroom politics pretending to be basketball decisions. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit like and subscribe so you never miss the next breakdown.